All right, it's another Wednesday afternoon, and we're bringing you the other side of the news, which is Flip Side. I'm Daisy Leo Asikidi, your host on today's show, and we'll be talking about domestic violence. Now, domestic violence is on the increase. That's what reports have shown. Domestic violence is actually prominent in Nigeria, although in other parts of Africa too, it's prominent. Now, there's a deep cultural belief in Nigeria that it is socially acceptable to hit a woman as a disciplinary measure. A lot of things are acceptable here, like cheating for men. Well, cases of domestic violence are on the high, and it shows no sign of reduction in Nigeria. That's the sad part. Regardless of age, tribe, religion, or even social status, domestic violence is trending. 1 in every 3 women admitted to being a victim of domestic violence. So incidents of domestic violence in Nigeria actually include battery, beatings, torture, acid baths, rape, and consequently death. It is, however, estimated that most of the cases are from intimate partners. I mean, from the hands of those who claim to love you and supposedly are there to protect you. The menace is eaten deep into our system, and if we don't do something, there's a problem. One of the major problems they say is victims do not speak out about violations of their rights. But do they even know their right? Some people are just nonchalant. They say the system is insensitive, and negative response from immediate family and society at large. But how true is this? Domestic violence is on the high, especially the physical aspects of this violence. So once every week at least, you read national dailies, you will find stories of one form of domestic abuse or another. The case of a man beating a woman is always there, a man maiming a woman, killing his wife, and all of those are there. But also, I won't fail to mention, in some rare cases, we also have a woman dealing with her husband in like manner, making headlines. Once again, I'm Daisy Leo Asikidi, and we're talking about domestic violence, but this time we would also be looking at it from a legal perspective. I have a legal practitioner in the studio with me that will be doing justice to this topic today. She also is a lecturer, and so you're 2-in-1 on the show today. I have Barrister Juliet Aimieruyi. Am I right?
Yes. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Now, pronouncing Benin names are not so difficult for me. Yeah, those who know me, they know I'm an Uselu girl.
I'm also an Uselu woman.
Are you serious?
Yes.
Wow. No, we'll have to talk about this Uselu thing after the show.
Okay.
So we're talking about domestic violence, and it's not a topic that people have not heard before. People are wondering what it is. I might have defined it slightly in the course of my intro, but what exactly is domestic violence?
Domestic violence is a complex phenomenon because it doesn't just talk about physical abuse, it also talks about emotional, psychology, and psychological abuse. And this is enshrined in section 46(1) of the VAP law. VAP law is Violence Against Persons Prohibition Law of Edo State.
Wow.
So domestic violence is not just about the beating, it could be psychological, it could also be physical. So, and there's also another ramification to domestic violence, which is forced financial dependence. Maybe we'll just need to expand on this because there are instances where the woman has capacity, she is willing, she wants to work, she has all it takes to work, but the man is saying, I do not want you to work. I do not want you to work means that you have to, even your sanitary towel, it means you have to depend on somebody to provide that for you. So that's a form of mental violence, mental torture, if you like, if we want to put it that way. But that is also another form of violence. And this is one of the basic, this is sometimes the bedrock of many challenges that have continued to spring up in the family. There are some families where some men, I don't know, maybe for some other reason, some might just be complex, some they feel they have capacity, although there are instances where maybe they are raising children and they are saying the woman should be at home. Ordinarily, it should be a combined effort. Now, but if the woman has to be at home to depend, such that she has to depend on the man for everything, that is psychological abuse to my mind. That's my take. So that is a form of domestic violence.
So a lot of people listening right now, they're already getting angry because there are so many stay-at-home moms. They call them full-time housewives.
Yes.
And some of them are even enjoying it. You see them with their neighbors gisting. Some don't even mind gisting with neighbors. They stay in their rooms and they're just cool with it. But while I do, but it's okay. Okay, but this violence thing, I don't know. Since you're not just defending people alone, you also interact with these people. Have you been able to ascertain what makes people violent? Like, why will I love you and still hit you?
Okay. Now, for this, there are so many ramifications to this. Now, for example, you know, in your introduction, you talked about traditional beliefs. That is one of the reasons why people still hate their spouses, because as we will talk further, like you did mention, you said violence is not just against the woman. In some rare instances, it's also against the man. I'm sure that explains why the verb law very beautifully captures it as spousal battery. Yes, back to the reason, why do people engage? Why is it that a person, a spouse, or someone wants to hit another person despite the love? Several reasons are responsible for this. One is traditional belief. Now, talking about traditional belief, now they said the family is the unit, is the smallest unit of the society. If we have responsible families, we'll have responsible society, we'll have decent society. And then the cultural values and cultural beliefs that we have learned in our families. There are some homes where they say it is normal, in quotes. Some cultures, it is normal to hit a woman. I dare tell you it is not normal, but it is abnormal. So, and that explains why even at the unit level, you find this domineering spirit in the man, because he says that the woman is responsible for, she's the one in the kitchen, she's the one who will do all the chores. And the man begins to grow up with this ego, and then he thinks that he can always hit the man, makes him superior. You understand? So that is cultural values, traditional beliefs is one of the reasons why people engage in, why we have domestic violence. That is one of the reasons. That is not to say that at every forum where I have opportunity to speak on domestic violence, I always make it clear that the woman thing, like women activists, are not against the man, because we have men as our husbands, we have them as our brothers, we have them as our friends, we have them as part of, and parcel of our families. So it is not a thing, a fight or a movement against the man, because we are all together in the same circle trying to build an amazing home, a wonderful home that will translate into a better society. Back to the reason why we have domestic violence. Another reason why we have domestic violence is financial reasons. Yes, and we know what the economy is. Even though we say that that is not a reason why people should resort to violence. I mean, people should sit and talk. A philosopher once said that a hungry man is an angry man. An angry man is an unreasonable man, and an unreasonable man is a violent man. So what happens when people have financial issues? They begin to, at any slight thing, oh, why is this plate on the table? Why is it not properly placed? And then before you know what's happening, little thing, it triggers violence in the family. And sometimes you ask yourself, you ask them, please, what's the cause of your quarrel? And you are trying to, they are beating around the bush. Nobody is able to say, this is the specific cause of the problem. So these are part of the challenges why we have domestic violence in our society, in our families.
Okay, now there's a big problem I see. I've heard several cases. I've even heard a situation where a woman came up. We had a show on radio, talked about herself and her husband's marriage. She wants to leave. The man has beaten her so much. And she came and it was shown, we had scars all over her body. And the man was picked up because she was willing to testify. But before the case went so far, the matter just died naturally. She wasn't pushing again. and she's still with that man. She's still alive, at least, praise God. Then because I'm saying that to say, to ask this, why victims keep going back to their abusive partners. And most times, when they finally break out from that abusive relationship, they jump right into another abusive relationship. There's a story trending on social media now about a self-acclaimed relationship expert, Blessing CEO. There was another man who's an auto dealer that was alleged to have driven the wife to suicide. And he's been beating the woman, all alleged, because the court has not said, given final judgments. The case is still on. And she set herself ablaze in their apartment at the island and all of that. Now, rumor has it that the man had an affair on top of the abuse. Recently, Blessing CEO came online to accuse the woman that she has always wanted to kill herself. She's not mentally stable and all that. And she's been hinting about her man, and those hints were pointing as if this auto dealer was a guy. Now, Blessing has been in an abusive relationship, at least so she said. She has 2 children. She's no longer married. The man used to beat her and oppress her. Now, there are some pictures and proofs linking her to this new man. If she is really dating this guy, how could you have left an abusive relationship for someone who's also rumored to be an abuser? But beyond rumors, we see these things happen as fact. Why do victims leave their abusive partners and go right back to them, or leave the abusive partners totally and go into another abusive relationship?
Well, that is another problem. Well, in our own society, African culture, we find this stigma. A woman doesn't want to be referred to as a divorcee, and so she strives hard to ensure that she remains in the relationship. Now, the case of Osinachi is a classic example of a woman who has been in an abusive relationship. Because I was reading something, and there was an author who carried out empirical research on the cause of her death. And when they interacted with her neighbors, her family members, her children who were connected to her, they said she has always been in that abusive relationship, that the husband had always abused her, but she remained there. And one of these reasons is, apart from culture, apart from societal stigma, there's also the church thing. I'm a Christian. How are people going to look at me? How are people going to say when I eventually, if I leave my home? Nobody wants to be seen as a single person. So I think that's one of the reasons. Then that's just one basic reason why. Then for other persons who keep moving from one abusive relationship to another, I would want to see it from a psychological perspective. I don't really see that as normal, because I don't think a right-thinking person will want to be beaten and beaten even when the person is at risk of losing his or her life. No right-thinking person will want to lose his life. And that's why for one author who was talking about one of the causes of domestic violence, he did talk about biological factors, that there are some persons where they probably had a fall, or there are some other factors in the brain, they have issues in the brain, and then these things don't show up until much later in life, when they begin to exhibit all this form, in the form of, when they begin to exhibit all kinds of violence and aggressive tendencies.
Yes, as well. Now, another reason, some people will tell you abusers change, at least in the course of interaction with some women, see it will change. Especially for those who are very religious, they keep praying, so just keep praying for him, it will change. Or in your experience so far, do abusers really change? Can they change?
Well, I do.
And is there even a cure? Maybe there are pills they can take.
Yes. Maybe the person needs to go for, a person who is always abusing a woman needs to go for counseling, or needs to go for some kind of psychological therapy. No, in this part of the world, when you see someone, when you tell someone that, are you sure you don't need to see a psychiatrist? The person takes it as, you want to tell me, do you want to tell me that I'm a mental patient? So most times, many people do need to see the psychiatrists.
And there might be hope.
Yes. Well, there might be hope, but I don't know. But the truth about it is, I realized from my little experience, a lady is in a relationship with her boyfriend or her fiancé, somebody who she intends to get married with too. And then the man, there will be some signs, like,
I was going to ask.
Okay, Maybe someday say, why did you put this on the table? And the next thing you hear is a slap. That's a sign that this person is going to be abusive. So ordinarily, the person should have used that scenario as an opportunity to back out of that abusive relationship. But most times, they keep pushing their head and keep pushing in hope that one day God will touch him. But for most of the cases, I rarely see the one that God has touched.
Changed.
Yes.
Okay. There's a Nigerian celebrity, one of those new guys. I can't remember his name. He did a song recently about red flags. He said, you saw the red flags, but red became your favorite color. So you ignored the signs. Now that you're in it, deal with it. But let's go a bit legal now, because I want to see this from some legal questions that came my way. And a woman said she has made up her mind to leave her marriage because of the abuse. She's afraid to die because she knows if she dies, another woman is going to come in and take care of her children, and she can't be too sure her husband will be able to pick a good wife to raise her kids. And so she has filed an order to restrain the man. But then again, she's very afraid. Now that she's filed an order, she cannot go home. So what can she do?
Okay. There are many ramifications to this. Now, for example, Section 15 of the Matrimonial Causes Act and Section 16 sub 1 of the Matrimonial Causes Act talk about judicial separation.
Okay.
So, in other words, it means that you can get an order from the courts so you can at least stay away from your home for some time. That's what that section talks about. It doesn't mean when you're in an abusive relationship, I mean, all that you should be thinking about is your life.
Okay, but most women would want to leave because of the children.
Yes.
Does that section also permit the woman to take the children even when the divorce is not concluded?
Yes, she can. She can take the children for safety. The court can grant, there can be an interim order, provided she's able to establish, for example, that even when her rights, even when she has not been abused, that's the beauty of the VAP law. Even when she has not been abused, when there is imminent danger, when she senses that there is danger that this man, that she's going to be abused, she can get order in the court. She can get order of protection order, specifically. Yes.
Okay. This protection order we're talking about, I want to know how the case is. We see movies. And sometimes movies, I don't know if they're like real life, but sometimes they're also very different. Fiction is not reality. And I've heard some cases where using rape as an example, imagine filing for a divorce or a restraining order or protection order against your husband in Nigeria because your husband rapes you. First of all, they're like, how can your husband rape you? Why did you not give him an order? But how does this hearings actually go? Just paint a picture for us. Do they ask questions that will now make the victim start crying or the abuser start, how is it like?
Okay. Most times it usually comes by way of an application.
Okay.
Yes, it can come in form of an application. The beauty of the law is that the application can come in such a way that somebody can file. Like we have non-governmental bodies, somebody can file on behalf of a person who is being abused. But there's a caveat in the law, and which is the VAP law, which provides that the written consent of the complainant must be sought. In other words, I cannot fight your battle more than you can fight it. You understand? Once you give that written consent, though I have personal issues with that particular provision of the law, but once you are able to get the written consent of the complainant, it means you can get an order. It could be an interim order, so that the person can get safety. And even the provision of the act, if you look at between sections 28 through section 32 of the VAP law, it talks about even how the government agencies and even non-governmental organizations can come in to provide shelter for the victim. Okay. So, and that's where FIDA has been at the forefront, canvassing for the rights of women and children. And even children can also be abused. So for even when children are abused, even without the consent of their parents or adults, we come in to assist them to get legal redress.
Okay. Before we go on a break, you want to say something else?
Okay. And even the legal redress can also compel, it can be an order, for example, restraining the respondents. The respondent in this sense may be the spouse, the man, from having access to them pending the determination of the final suit, so that he doesn't have any opportunity to abuse them. So the truth about it is, these things, speaking realistically, may sometimes sound odd, because most times when the woman is determined, I have a matter pending right now where a woman is determined to take it up, to enforce her rights, to ensure that she stays away from an abusive relationship. That is where you find these cultural values still come into place, and somebody is telling you, do you want to take your husband to court? Think about the implications. So, and then when the one is spoken to, and then you have church also coming in, you have pastors coming in, that you should stay in an abusive relationship. But maybe when we still talk subsequently, we'll talk about the need for us to be aware of our rights and the need for us to enforce our rights, if only in the spirit of staying alive.
Yeah. Okay, but before we go on a break, because we're already approaching the time for the news headlines, I'd ask this question now. What about cases where you have no evidence of the abuse? Okay. I mean, it's not all the time that you have scars to show, or pictures to show, or medical reports. Could even be mental. So, how do you go about a case like that?
Okay. That's where we have affidavit evidence. Most times for civil cases, we know that civil cases are based on the preponderance of evidence. I'm not saying that you can just go to court, but if you affidavits, for example, they are cogent and compelling enough to convince the court that your right is being infringed, that you are about, not even when you have been abused. Don't forget, I made that point very clear, that even the VAP law protects those who are at the verge of even being abused. For instance, you see that somebody is having strange behavior, he's gathering machetes in the night, he's becoming violent, he's aggressive. I mean, you should take steps. You shouldn't wait. You should take steps to ensure that you are protected. And that's where legal mechanisms, of course, are there in place to ensure that victims get adequate legal protection.
Okay. The good thing I know about FIDA, at least, I've had series of female lawyers on flip side, and they keep saying they can even take up case pro bono. And you just walk up to them, share your story, they will know how to advise you, what steps to take, and all and all and all. No, they are not a group of bitter single women. Many of them are married. At least all the ones I brought on the show are married. You're married with 5 children.
Yes. I've been married for 17 years.
Wow. Yes. So it's not that they are trying to scatter marriages or anything, but for your life and for the future of your children, if you're in an abusive relationship, don't go yet. Stay tuned. We're going to go on a quick break. When we return, we'll talk some more on the show. We'll be right back. Okay, we have just a few more questions to go. My guest needs to leave shortly, but while we're enjoying the discussion and getting informed, we see these cases now since women started talking about their abuses, rape and all that. They just come online and share their stories. Go on Twitter, you see threads on how I was abused or how I was raped and those kind of cases. Or I don't think all of those stories are true. Some are false. So in a situation where maybe there's now a fight for custody, and the woman or the man is looking for a way to get an upper hand to prove that our partner or his partner is abusive, so that court can now grant full custody of the children to him or her, they could lie and say, my partner abuses me. He beats me, he rapes me, even though I don't have evidence to prove. But if the court is able to determine that it's a lie, what then happens?
Okay, this question is a bit complex. I'll tell you that issues of custody are very, very sensitive issues. They are sensitive because the interests of the children are at stake. And in all divorce proceedings, for example, and in all actions, in all cases in courts that affect children, the court considers the best interests of the children. Where will the children be safe? Now, if there are cogent and compelling reasons why the woman should have custody, particularly when they are infants, when they are less than 18, most times the court usually gives custody to the woman. So it's not about being abusive or not abusive, it's the interests of the children that are at stake. Yes. So if the woman is able to prove that, for instance, I've had a matter where there was a strong allegation that the man was fondling with the breast of one in the house. Now that is a strong reason why, and there was evidence, and that's the reason why the court will not want to give custody of a female child to a man.
True.
Because the court is of the view that the interest of that female will be better served if she's with the woman. But that is not to say there are no false cases of a woman saying she's been abusive when indeed she has not been abused. Now, if a woman alleges in a court, say for instance in a divorce proceeding, that she's been abused and then she suffered all manners of physical and mental abuse, she should be able to convince the court based on the preponderance of evidence that that the man actually abused her. This can be via pictures. You can use pictures. You can also, maybe she went to the police station to report. There should be evidence to that effect, or she wrote a petition to the police station, or she probably went to the hospital and then she paid bills. Those are instances where you can say, okay, I sustained injuries, or this is exactly what happened when I went to court. Now, in the absence of these, the court will actually just rely on the evidence before it. Yes, it could also be witnesses. It could be witnesses, say neighbors, for example, or maid, somebody who was there, who would give them evidence. But if it's a criminal charge that was probably filed against a man alleging assault, and then the man was discharged and acquitted, and there's evidence to show that that it was done maliciously, then it means that the man may have recourse to courts, and that's where he could file another action in malicious prosecution. That is where he's been discharged and acquitted of a criminal offense of assault. And then if that was born out of malice and is able to convince the court, then he can get damages. That's the basic provision of the law. In
most of these women, wives, should I say, wives or partners being abused, where the woman is the one being abused, you notice that the man has control of the finances most times, or the man is naturally just richer. He has a lot of money. Now, in a situation where the woman is the one filing and there's a court proceeding on and the man doesn't show up in court, maybe because he has money. You know, some people, they go any lengths to cover cases, and I'm sorry to say this, but judiciary, they fear them. People are very... But what happens when the man doesn't show up in court?
When he files, who goes to court and doesn't show up?
The woman files, but the person she's accusing.
The judgment will be entered against him. And for all that it is worth, the judiciary still remains the last hope of the common man. Without the judiciary, life will be nasty, brutish, and short. May God not allow us to get to that stage. Because the judiciary is the last hope of the common man, for now, we do not have any other hope but to hope in the judiciary for justice. And most times, justice must not just be done, but must be seen and must be seen to be manifestly done. You understand? So, so that said, where the man does not show up, judgments will be entered against him. So even at that, it might not necessarily be against him. Let me just paint this point very clearly. Because even when the man is not there, the court will look at the available evidence before it. It is the evidence that is compelling before the court that the court will look at. So judgment will be given based on that evidence in court. So even when a woman, for example, goes to court and then the man does not appear and the evidence she's giving is not compelling enough, the matter could still be dismissed.
Okay. On YouTube, there's this part of YouTube they call YouTube Shorts. I started following one Indian lady because of her videos where she talked about being a survival of domestic abuse, domestic violence, physical abuse. She married at the age of 19 to a very rich, into a rich family. You know the way these Indian people do their thing. And she was living, it's like a family house arrangement. So she was there with her husband, but the man used to beat her. So one of the days before she was 20, he did it too much. And she was battered all over. She could barely talk. So the morning, she had her bath and came out for dinner. And her mother-in-law saw her with all of the bruises on her and asked, "Did he do this to you?" And she nodded. That she heard the mother-in-law telling the son, "Even if you must beat your wife, must you make it so obvious? This is too much." And that was where she said she knew she wasn't safe in the house. Why will you be telling your son even if he must? Your statement should be, he shouldn't. So she looked for a way to go to her mother, and the husband said she couldn't go. Or when the man left for work, she packed a bag, just a small bag, and told her mother-in-law, "It's very urgent. They sent for me." And before they knew, she ran home. But she was so lucky, which is very unusual in Asia. Her mother took her in, cleaned her wounds, and insisted she wasn't going back. But for her safety, they had to send her out of Asia to UK, where she's now a practicing nurse. So what advice are you going to give to families of people who are in a domestic abusive relationship, even if the abuser is very rich, because what is suffer the cost in many.
I understand. If somebody finds herself in a woman particularly, because she's usually the weak one, she has no funds, no resources, and that's why we say women should try to be empowered. But when you find yourself in that kind of situation, you must talk to someone. And feeders' ears are always there for you. You must talk to someone and seek help immediately. So that's very, very important. And then feeder will take it up and take out legal measures to ensure your protection and particularly your safety.
Okay. And on a final note, any advice, any words? Before we go?
The family is the unit of the society. I said that earlier, and I always say that. So it's important for parents to raise their children to be very, very responsible, to train them to eschew violence. They should stay away from violence. They should not be aggressive. For example, there's no reason why your son should hit your daughter. Hit her in such a way as to make her feel she's nothing. I mean, if it starts from there, because if we have responsible families, we have decent families, we have decent societies. And then most times it is good to speak out. Speak out. It's very, very important. You must talk to someone. International Federation for Female Lawyers in Benin is out there, willing and ready to assist women who are in abusive relationships. It's important for all women to also be empowered, because when they're empowered, half of the problem is solved. There was a matter we did in court, and that matter really was not, the judgment was not palatable. And because it was a marriage that was contracted traditionally, yes, after 37 years of marriage, the woman was thrown out of the house. Because the marriage was not under the act, the woman had never done anything serious for a living other than subsistence farming of raising vegetables. So at the end of the day, although some of the children were grown, they weren't really doing anything. Imagine if she had to be someone who is empowered, who had her home. I mean, it wouldn't have been that bad. She would have somewhere to run to. So women should try as much as possible to be empowered and get their hands working. So,
all right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much,
Thank you.
Barrister Juliet.
Thank you.
When we return, of course, she won't be here, but we're going to go on. It's about you. You know, we do that to. It's a small health segment on the show, where we'll talk about your health and how you can be a better person. in all of this, no matter what discussion we're dealing with, if you're not healthy enough, you won't even be alive to deal with all of this. So if you're not healthy and you're even in an abusive relationship, problem times 2. If you're not healthy and you want to do an operation, wahala. So our health is very key. But today we're talking about pot belly. And it's a very risky situation. We see most men are pregnant as their wives are pregnant too. But let's talk quickly about pot belly, and after that we'll be ending the show officially.
Around the stomach. It looks odd when you wear tight clothes and causes embarrassment. In fact, it's difficult to lose flaps from the belly region. Many people try to lose belly fat by eating less or famishing themselves, which is not at all a good idea and may result in several harmful side effects. The worst part is that the dream of getting flat and slim stomach remains elusive even after taking exercise and a healthy diet, because we, out of sheer ignorance, make many mistakes which shatter our dreams of getting a flat stomach. But worry no more. The healthy way to trim down your tummy is to use natural home remedies. The first thing to do is to change your feeding habits. Banish all junk food from your diet and stick to a healthy diet. Junk foods like pizza, burger, noodles, processed food, and fast food like soft drinks, fries, and pastries have a high caloric value and are too unhealthy. Reduce sugar intake, beers, and carbonated drinks. They cause bloating. So, for getting flat stomach, you have to stay away from them. Reason being that most junk foods are laden with high amounts of processed carbohydrates and sugar, the main cause of bulging and fat tummy. Banish all junk foods from your diet to lose weight from the stomach and to get a flat tummy. Now that you have banished junk from your diet, replace them with healthy food and vegetables. We can afford to make you hungry. Eat more raw foods like fruits. You will find that they are so much tastier and satisfying than cooked food. It detoxifies the body, makes you feel light and healthy, and over time you won't even feel like polluting your body with unhealthy food. Let your diet include watermelon because it contains 82% water, which helps your stomach not to crave for food. Watermelon is rich in vitamin C, which is beneficial for health. Cucumber also could be included. It contains 96% water and 45% calories. Add cucumber in your diet as a salad or eat raw cucumber to get a flat tummy now. Avocado is another useful fruit for burning excess fat. Avocado is rich in fiber and monounsaturated fatty acids. Use avocado to replace margarine and butter. Another thing is avoid fried foods. But if you must fry your foods, go for oils with high concentration of monounsaturated fats MUFAs like soybean oil and olive oil. Let your diet include nuts rich in fiber like walnuts, peanuts, and almonds. Still talking about your feeding habits. Stop eating late at night as it causes accumulation of fat around your belly. Try to eat at least 2 hours before you go to bed to keep the stomach fat away. Avoid overeating. Large meals put a lot of load on the stomach and intestine. It reduces your digestion. Chances are that a lot of food will be stored as fat instead of used for energy, especially if you are not physically active. Eat slowly and chew each morsel well. It will control the amount of food you take and make you feel satiated early. You must follow this tip to lose fat from your belly and get a slim, flat stomach. Away from your feeding habits, drink lemon juice. Lemon juice on a daily basis will definitely reduce belly fat soon. Add lemon juice in a glass of water, a pinch of salt, garlic, and ginger. Stir it well. Drink this every morning in order to reduce belly fat. Green tea works as a detoxifier which helps in burning the excess body fat. Consuming green tea daily will also make your skin glow as well as make your tummy flat. You should also drink plenty of water. Water helps in reducing weight. Drink at least 8 glasses of water a day. This will not only flush the fat, but also make your skin shiny and glowy. Your hair will become healthy. In fact, your whole body will become radiant. After doing all these, you can take exercise to reduce stomach fat and tone up the abdominal muscles. Taking exercise is the best way to tone up your stomach muscles and lose weight quickly. There are several sets of exercises that will help give you a flat tummy and a toned up ab. Exercises like squats, sit-ups, dancing, crunches, and running on a treadmill. Or better still, contact a gym instructor. Don't forget, your feeding habit is the major cause of pot belly. Change your feeding habit and see a positive result. Your body is your responsibility. Take good care of it.
Your body is your responsibility. Take good care of it. Your mental health is also your health. Everything in general. Women, you need to protect yourselves. Men, you have to too. I know that there are situations where men are also in abusive relationship, but from statistics, we have more women who are dealing with some form of physical abuse or another, or physical violence, or should I just use the broader word, domestic violence. And so most times we're talking about women, advocating for women because they are more at the receiving end. If you die in that relationship, in that marriage, the kids you say or you claim that you're staying put for are going to even suffer more, because the little protection you could offer, you wouldn't be offering it anymore. So empower yourself so that when you deal with situations like this, even if the man will eventually change, like most of our religious leaders would encourage us to pray for change, you'll be fighting for that change from a distance. First, protect yourself and leave very far. You know, protect your children while you're doing the prayers. I'm not saying you have to divorce your partner immediately. And also, it's not every time the person will change. Some people are so abusive that if you want to even leave them, it's threat to your life. There was a case that happened around Ekosodin here in Benin where the woman tried to leave and the man set her ablaze. But she was lucky enough to hold the man to herself, and they both have passed from the wounds from the bonds. Well, that's a sad note, yes. The woman was able to not go alone, but the children are now left both fatherless and motherless. They are now orphans. And that story is something that if they share with any other family, another stigma and wahala. So before it gets to that situation, protect yourself. If the person you're running from is going to still be a threat even when you leave, then you file for a protection order so that the person doesn't even come close to you, not even a mile close to you, and you'll be safer. I'm Daisy Leo Asikidi. Thanks for watching. We'll be back again next week, that's for sure.